Well, because you don't know who Francis Galton is.
What?
You don't know
Okay,
who.
listen, dude,
Uh,
listen to me. I'm going to end the conversation real quick. Not that you're being rude or anything like that, but you keep on mentioning this gentleman's name. It has nothing to do with Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong. Now,
yeah.
you stated that I was lying about Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong, saying I'm pretending to know something I don't know. How do you know that I don't know that Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong were significantly influenced by evolution in terms of their worldview? How do you know I don't know that?
Oh no, I'm not saying that you.
Yeah, you
that
did.
you don't like.
You just said I'm pretending to know something that I don't know. How do you?
Okay, let's just drop that. Let's drop that. I just want to. I just want to say this.
Okay.
To
So
you.
were you making an accusation without support?
All right, whatever, Darth.
Okay.
Like you keep cutting me off, and you're not letting me explain. So whatever. You keep cutting me off.
I'll let you explain in a second. Okay, I'll shut up in a second. So you accused me of lying, and you said I was lying and being intellectually dishonest because I pretended to know something that I don't know. And when I ask you, how do you know that I don't know that? And I asserted what I don't know, that I know that I don't know. When I ask you, how do you know that? You're dead silent.
I can explain if you let me.
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, how do you know that I know that I don't know? How do you know that?
Well, here's where the way I see it. You you said that the atheist dictators were influenced by the theory of evolution.
Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong were heavily influenced by Charles Darwin theory of a universal common ancestry and biological origins.
Mm-hmm. But you also can concede that.
I'm going to ask you a question. Do I know that I don't know that?
No, I don't know.
Okay, good. I have now caught you in an absolute contradiction because you.
No, the truth, Darth.
Please don't overtalk me. All right, I will shut up momentarily. I have now caught you in an absolute contradiction. Now, you said that I was being intellectually dishonest and hence lying because, and I will quote you, because Darth, you were pretending to know something that you don't actually know. When you say I pretend, then I know that I don't know it. When I ask you, how do you know that I know that I don't know that they were influenced, you won't answer the question.
How do I know that you don't know?
Yeah, how do you know that? Do you know? Do you know? Very simple question. Do you know that I know that I don't know that Stalin was heavily influenced by Charles Darwin?
By Charles Darwin, not Francis Galton. That's what I was implying.
Okay, listen. If you mention this guy's name again, I'll just move on to somebody else. Okay, because
that's part of the.
Okay, one more time. This is embarrassing for you. Now,
I'm just trying to get my view across, but you keep cutting me off.
No, I'm not getting an answer to my question. Okay, now.
All right, I'll just say you're right and I'm wrong. I'll just say that you're right, I'm wrong. Can I say what I want to say?
Okay, so do you retract your accusation that?
All right, yes.
Okay, good. Then we'll move on. Good. See, good. So if you're going to accuse me of lying, you better have support for it, and you've now admitted that you didn't have support at all.
All right. I don't have support. Okay.
Yeah. So now who looks silly?
I just wanted to say this to you, that you can attribute Darwin's idea, which was not social Darwinism, that came out. That was from Herbert
I didn't
Spencer.
mention social Darwinism.
No, but that's the concept that you were attributing to the atheist dictators.
That's false. That's not. In fact, I never. I don't discuss
the struggle for existence.
I discuss the Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. I don't discuss social Darwinism.
Is there anything from the ideas attributed to Francis Galton that were influenced by the atheist dictators, or was it all?
You have mentioned this gentleman's name eight times. I'm not familiar with the name. Whether these
that's why I say it's kind of a little bit. I'm not saying that you're bad. I'm just saying, like, we're humans and we don't.
I'm not taking it that way. But the bottom line here is these atheists, in terms of their outlook as to what they thought about living and human beings dying, was from an evolutionary perspective, that mankind is just simply the end product of an evolutionary descent.
Mm. But was that everything? But was that everything?
They do not view mankind as having dignity, being made in the image of God. And so they thought that the greater good for the population of the earth is to sacrifice people who do not support their ultimate political ends, and they are willing to sacrifice through direct killing or starvation in terms of their political views, which are the product of their historical evolutionary views of biological history.
I could totally see that Mao Zedong and Stalin in particular, that they could have been influenced, yes, by the ideas
of. It's not they could have been. They were.
All right. So the point about Adolf Hitler and his ideology and why he did what he did was more the idea of racial hygiene and eugenics, which mostly came out of Francis Galton and his ideology and his worldview. That you can find a link between Hitler and Galton, maybe not Stalin.
Yeah, maybe I'll look in that. I by no means claim to be an expert on Adolf Hitler, but what I do know is you can clearly see the influence of the Darwinian concept of evolution in Mein Kampf. It's crystal clear in there. Okay.
I've read also that in Mein Kampf, Hitler read about quote unquote racial hygiene and that concept, which I don't think came from Darwin. I think came from
who said all of Adolf Hitler's views came from Darwin? I didn't say that.
Well, you said it was Mao Zedong and Stalin.
I said one more time. Listen, see, this never ceases to amaze me how people mishear and misrepresent what I said. I said Adolf Hitler, Mao Zedong, and Stalin were significantly influenced by the materialistic creation story known as the Darwin's theory of evolution.
Can I just say real quickly as a correction that Stalin didn't really follow Darwin as much as he followed Lamarckian theory of evolution, right?
Well, that would be a moot point.
Well, I'm just as a slight correction.
Even if that may be the case, okay, and I'm not going to challenge you on that point, but the point is, Stalin believed in a purely materialistic origin and descent of all of the complex life forms, whether it was Lamarckian or not.
Well, that's fair, right? But I'm also not getting the sense that from reading Mein Kampf that Hitler had a materialistic point of view, right?
Hitler did believed in the materialistic descent of biological life forms on this planet. Okay. Now, the funny thing is, what most people don't know, some people are aware of it, in spite of his strong belief in the theory of evolution, and you can clearly see this in Mein Kampf, he nonetheless ordered Charles Darwin's books to be burned. And the reason why is because he didn't like somebody being English and promoting their favored theory.
Right. But with regards to things like eugenics and beliefs about race and other things of that sort.
Yeah.
Do
you know what?
Can I just say?
Yeah. Do you know who one of the leaders was in the eugenics movement early on?
Well, no, but can I just say that
Charles Darwin's son.
Oh, okay. Well, fair. But look, what I'm trying to get at here, right, is that eugenics and these beliefs about race had their origins, right, in colonialism and imperialism, first off. And then later on, they were that theory of eugenics and its application was something that was popular in the United States before it was popular in a country like Germany or by Nazis or other materialistic atheists.
Yeah,
right.
It became Charles Darwin laid the groundwork for eugenics is a natural byproduct of adopting an evolutionary retrospective of biological history.
Can I say though that at that time, the theory of genetics and the theory of natural selection were actually competing for the ground as to which one explains life and diversity on Earth better. So it actually wasn't the case that they had both genetics and the theory of natural selection together to explain
genetics wasn't even on the radar at Charles Darwin's day.
Well, I realize I'm not talking about Charles Darwin. I'm talking about the United. I'm talking about the. I'm talking about when eugenics.
Even after his death,
came out during the United States, right?
Even after his death, they didn't know about genes.
Right, but I'm not talking about Charles Darwin, right? I'm talking about Christians in the United States that came up.
Genetics. You mentioned genetics. Genetics started when people discovered there were genes. Now, people always intuitively knew that there's some type of information that's passed on. But when you start talking about genetics, you're talking about the passing on of specific genes.
Right, but look, my point is that it's not necessarily the case that Darwinism was needed for the theory, for the pseudoscientific theory of eugenics to be created, right? Because there was already a theory.
No, they go hand in hand. They go hand in glove, because eugenics is trying to preserve the good traits and eliminate the bad traits, through speeding up natural selection.
But look, my point is that you can have the same thing with genetics. If you only knew about genetics, right, you would still be able to observe things like artificial selection. People do that with their animals, farm animals, all the time. And they're selecting specific traits that they think are good traits or a good stock, and they want that.
That's not the same thing as eugenics.
Well, I mean, it's a little similar to eugenics, right?
No,
but is that it wasn't like it's not necessary. Like Darwin's theory.
There's an overlapping.
Look, my point is that Darwin's theory, right, doesn't. But like, if we were to eliminate Darwin's theory, the idea of genetics in itself and passing on of good traits, right, or desirable traits, right, would still be something that people would be able to use.
Oh, I agree with you to a certain point, but without Darwin's theory of evolution, that man was just simply an animal, and that we needed to further the progress of so-called natural selection. If people had continued to believe that the major animal groups were the product of a creator rather than just simply materialistic descent, it was the major intellectual fuel for the eugenics movement.
Well, but my point is that it wasn't actually established that at that time yet, whenever eugenics was created in the United States, right? It wasn't actually like, look, I'm trying to say that there were two competing theories, right? Look, I'm competing. There were two competing theories, right? And
eugenics
there wasn't
in Europe, and especially England, due to the radical change in outlook under the theory of evolution. Then it spread to the United States.
But look, what I'm trying to say is that at the time, right? Look, I'm willing to concede that. Fine, I don't know about that, but I'll concede it. I'll believe that it's true. What I'm trying to say is that the theory of natural selection and genetics, right, were two competing theories at the time, and in the 1900s, right? Early on in the 1900s, it wasn't actually established which one was the predominant theory, and so you had people arguing that
eugenics had its origin and its growth in the 19th century, not in the 1900s.
I said I conceded that already.
Charles Darwin's son was one of the prominent foundational leaders of the eugenics movement.
Okay.
Who coined the term eugenics? Who coined the term eugenics?
Right, but I'm not disputing that, right? What I'm saying something completely different. What I'm saying is that there are two competing theories of the diversity of life on Earth, right? So there was genetics and there was natural selection, right? And so those two things weren't actually.
Where
they seem to go hand in hand.
Explain to me how genetics was a competing theory with the theory of evolution. What is the what is the theory of genetics?
Well, I mean, it was proposed as a count at the time, 1900s. It was proposed in the early 1900s. It was proposed as a counter explanation to the diversity of life, right?
No. There was no.
Yes,
Listen,
hey,
there was no. Listen, you don't know what you're talking about. There
I
was
do. Evolutionary biology. I took evolutionary biology in college, and that's one of the things we talked about.
Then you should write the dean a message and ask for a refund. There was no competing theory of, quote, genetics as the origin of all life forms, as opposed to Darwin's idea.
Well, okay. Well, let me just Google the great
synthesis. That Darth Dawkins.
Let me just show that there was a synthesis of these two ideas that was actually fairly recent development.
Where I can agree with you is that with, starting with people like Gregor Mendel, okay, in the 19th century, and as more and more experiments were revealing in infancy genetics, okay, more was becoming known about genetics in the beginning of the late 19th century and the early 20th century, okay, that was being supplemented and integrated into the theory of evolution. But there was not a, quote, competing theory of origins, biological origins, that we called the theory of genetics. That's not to say that there weren't ideas and theories about genetics, but there was not a theory of genetics that competed against the theory of evolution. All right, I guess we can move on. Anybody want to jump on the topic, change the topic?
Yes. I actually want to ask you a question. Can God, being an omnipotent being, regret something that he's done previously?
I'm having trouble hearing you. Could you repeat that again?
Could God, knowing he's an omnipotent, incontingent being?
I didn't hear the last part. Omnipotent and what?
Incontingent.
You mean? Do you mean non-contingent?
Yes. Sorry, my English isn't
okay.
Well,
that's okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
Could God regret something that he did previously?
The answer is no. However, we do have examples of anthropomorphic expressions that are attributed to God, where it's simply stating, it is describing God in terms of a human analogy, that God was grieved that he had created man. But since God knew from the beginning of creation, God knew the truth value of all propositions. God knew all of the free choices mankind would make. So does that answer your question?
No. I just have a Bible quote here. I would like to clarify it.
The Lord repented that he had made man.
No. It is in 1 Samuel 15.
Go ahead.
I'll send it in the chat. It is.
Can I say, for reference, I posted the modern synthesis that took place in the 40s.
Okay, sure. Okay, so 1 Samuel, what chapter?
1 Samuel, chapter 14.
All right, give me a second.
No, sorry. Here, I'll send it in this.
What is it? 1 Samuel 14? Is that it?
Sorry, no. 1 Samuel 15, 10 to 11.
Okay. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king because he has turned. Yeah, that's an anthropomorphic expression.
And what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, when we read the English translation, it's very important that we find out what the underlying Hebrew or Greek is, where it's translated into there. God does not have regrets like human beings did. Okay. God is expressing, it's called an anthropomorphism. He is describing his mental state in terms of human states that we can understand, that he is grieved now. Okay. Now, suppose there's a father who has a son who wants to take over the family business, right? And suppose, let's say hypothetically in this analogy, the father knows the propensity of that son to ruin part of the business, but the son says, listen to me, you know what, I'm not a robot, I won't make that decision. And the father knows what the son is going to do anyway, and he allows the son to take over a portion of the business. Okay, even knowing ahead of time what he's going to do, he can later on say, I regret making that decision, while full knowing what was going to take place.
But why would
would you say God is masochistic?
No.
That's a stupid question.
No. I'm asking, why would he go ahead and inflict grief upon?
Why did God create you?
That's a good question. Is he masochistic?
I'm wondering, why would he inflict? Why would he inflict
okay,
grief?
listen. If you're not going to let me respond, then I'll server mute you.
Sorry,
all right. I more than welcome your question and interaction. Okay. Now,
go ahead.
To answer your question, I could pose a similar question. Why would God make you when he knows that you would be a rebellious sinner and that you may rebel and refuse to accept Jesus Christ as your savior? Because a God of love gives his creatures the capacity to make certain free choices, even though in his omniscience he knows that they will exercise it in rebellion.
So why would he make us to begin with?
Now, Franklin, let me ask you this question. You sound like a young man. Are you married?
Just recently.
Okay, good. Do you plan on having children?
At some point or another, yes.
Okay, all right, good. Now, you do know that when you decide to have children, there is a certain likelihood that your child will suffer greatly in their life. You also know that they're going to die. You also know that they are going to commit either at least small acts of evil, and they may commit medium and great acts of evil. Why do you choose to bring someone into the world who you know will commit evil and may suffer terribly and may commit great acts of evil? Why would you do that?
You know what? You're right. I probably shouldn't have kids.
Okay.
Can I ask something?
Nobody else.
Go ahead.
Okay, I personally have.
By the way, Plane, listen, sounds like you're really far away.
Never mind.
No. I want to hear what you have to say. Just try to get.
It's fine. I think my mic's fucked up.
All right. Do me a favor. I don't want to discourage you. Just do your best to ask.
It's cool.
I'll turn your volume up on my side.
Dorothy, she doesn't want to ask you a question. Can I ask you a question?
All right, go ahead. She's not going.
What do you think of the quote from the Nobel Prize-winning American physicist Steven Weinberg, who once said that religion is an insult to human dignity, that without it we would have good people doing good things and evil people doing evil things, but for a good person to do an evil thing, that takes religion? What do you think of that quote?
I say I fart in his general direction.
Yeah.
No, that statement is meaningless gibberish, because this man cannot account for dignity at all. He cannot account for the concept of good or evil.
I see.
Okay, he cannot account for any of the specifics given his worldview.
Interesting. Okay.
And I don't care how smart he is. He may be a very brilliant man. He may be highly qualified educationally, but that statement right there is just a statement of blind faith based upon his worldview, which is based upon blind faith.
And you don't think the atheist dictators, they weren't a religion? That was blind faith.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your last statement?
That the societies and the atheist dictators, like their societies, they were religion.
Listen, I'm not trying to be rude. Your microphone is now too close to you. I'm having trouble understanding it.